Hello, welcome to the latest episode of Through the Pages. We are discussing one of my favorite authors today, Paulo Coelho. Aleph is the book, and this was a return to form for Paulo Coelho for me. So I just read Archer not too long ago. That was his most recent, and if you saw the review, not a big fan. Just wasn't my style. It was just kind of like 2 sentences per page, illustrations and stuff, but just sort of meant to be sort of like semi-spiritual, inspirational stuff. Just wasn't my jam. I like when those themes come about through the writing, not because they're being written about, if you know what I mean. But so beyond that type of book, which he doesn't have much of, like the Warrior of Light or Warriors of Light, I think would be the other one, maybe 1 or 2 others in there, but he seems to be either kind of, in novels, we'll say, wholly like fictionalized, like The Fifth Mountain or The Alchemist. But what I recognize through this book is that I like his autobiographical ones the most. When I kind of like reflected after reading this of like, what are my favorites of his? What are my not so favorites? I saw clear categories there. So these books here actually are some of his autobiographical ones. Zaire, I believe Zaire is in there. I mean, it seemed pretty autobiographical, but these two, and I really want to show them because they're the first editions. Look at those covers. Oh my gosh. The colored pencil, like, yeah. So the Valkyries, the Pilgrimage. Pilgrimage might be my favorite Paulo Coelho book. So if you're wondering on where to start, that's a really good place. The other one would be Hippie. That was prior to, this is the most recent novel. And it's so good. Look at that man. That's a beautiful man right there. But yeah, so Aleph, just like the kind of cover would evoke, it's a strange trip. And it's so good. So it kind of, without, if you know me, you know I'm not here to spoil anything, but the general premise of the book is it's just a group of people on the Trans-Siberian Railway. So basically going from the eastern part of Russia, or the western part of Russia, all the way to the western part. A long train ride, a lot of time on there, lot of train time. And so he basically was getting into a point in his life where he was like antsy, and then basically just like signs up for all this stuff and wanted to always be on the Trans-Siberian Railway, and so like signed up for all these events and booked things, and brought his whole publishing crew and everything with him as they made this journey, and needed some time away from his wife, where they could kind of like regroup. I think they're regrouping at the World Cup. Just makes me pine for real events again. It's like, I would go to a soccer game. I haven't been to a soccer game ever. And it's like, yeah, you haven't been to anything ever because it's pandemic. So, this book right here, this was really intriguing to me because the title itself, Aleph, is basically speaks to something sort of metaphysical, a point where you're able to travel spiritually in a way. I'm not sure how best way to describe it. So like, and if you've read his stuff, you know that there's some, you're either probably into it or not. And it's not that to say you're into it means you believe everything in it, but you can read mystical writing and not be like, what is that? Like, you can just like, maybe, man, I don't know. Like, so like, yeah, you gotta have kind of an open mind on his stuff and maybe not be so serious about it and able to just enjoy it. Like, so Aleph is just kind of like these points, and there happened to be one on the train where you would kind of go through your past lives or have access to your past lives and kind of be able to dig in those a little bit. It's kind of the way I would describe it. He describes it far better than I do, but it was really neat, and really it was about him and one other character, Halal, who was just this woman who he just kind of resonated with, knew, you're an important part of my journey right now. There's a reason why we're meant to be kind of lined up right now. And it was, I don't know, it's just fascinating. It reminded me, I've had one encounter where it was just this deep feeling of like, we're not going to know each other for like years and years spend live together, have a relationship or anything like that, but it's like we were meant to connect right now, and both of us kind of feel that, and it just kind of rode out that little journey. Story for another time, but that relationship in there was so, I don't know, like I almost want to just say wholesome, like, but it was like spiritually wholesome. So they were both growing together and acknowledging the uncertainty in it, but also like the importance. And I don't know, he kind of tiptoed around like basic relationship stuff or adultery stuff. It was just, it was like peak Paulo Coelho for me. Yeah, and so if you've read any of these ones and liked them, you're in for a treat with Aleph. I think I waited so long to read this one because I just had zero clue what it was about, where with the other ones I can have sort of a sense. But getting to the end of the line on the Paulo Coelho, I think I have maybe like 3 books left. One of them, or I know Veronica Decides to Die, Adultery, and that might be it. But he's the author I've read the most books of, and it's not to say that across the board satisfied with them, but with The Archer being his last one and not liking it, he could write probably 5 terrible books in a row. I would still buy his 6th after that. You know what I mean? Like he's done a lot of good. If he starts just churning out like John Grisham bullshit or something, then maybe, but it would take a while. I'd still probably read it. So Aleph, I would say if you have not read any Paulo Coelho, start with something else. Go a little earlier in his journey, because it is very autobiographical. But, same picture actually. If you want to read his actual biography, it's not autobiography. It's written by Fernando Moraes. This is one of the best biographies I've ever read. It's the reason I hope for more autobiographical fictionalized novels from him. His life is just absurd and outstanding and just like mind-blowing. And it's one of those things, if you ever get like freaked out, like, oh man, I'm getting to be like 30s or something, or like, oh man, I'm late in life, it's like, this man didn't publish books until middle age. So everything before that's just do whatever the fuck you want. Like, just be happy and things will come, you know, if you're working at him. Like, he was a lyricist, he did so many other things. And so to think of like author being a late chapter in his life, like, is just mind-blowing and kind of reassuring. That like if you ever feel like I'm not on the right path, or like I'm not moving fast enough, that's one person who I really like to is like Paulo Coelho was a late bloomer. So like a lot of his books, this was originally written in Portuguese and then translated to English. I think sometimes because all of his books are translated, maybe he goes a little simpler on some of the language, where I feel like it's relatively easy to pass off a Paulo Coelho book to someone who doesn't usually read a lot and know that it's not going to be like heavy academic stuff or drudgery, or, you know, like it's just really good writing. And maybe some people want that higher stuff and would look down at this. I know there's a lot of critique of Paulo Coelho, and they say like his writing of spirituality in such a simplistic way is unbecoming or just trite or cliche. And it's like, well, at a certain point, some of the lessons don't have to be this super complicated thing, you know? Yes, it doesn't mean that they're simply understood and processed permanently, but like, you should be able to have stories related to spirituality that aren't so far out of reach intellectually for the masses. So, Paulo Coelho fan, Paulo Coelho defender. Big love for this man. Big love for this book. Probably in my top 5. I liked how real it was in the sense too, like, cause some of them, like the Valkyries, I'll say, like, it's so like, can this happen? Like, and not to say that I only want to read fiction that could happen, but like, it pushes the bounds further. Where Aleph the strangeness in it is coupled with such realism and such honesty that you're just like, I assume that happened. Like, in a really nice way. And so, yeah, Aleph, give it a chance. It's a good one. Hopefully I'll be reviewing more Paulo Coelho books on here because I got 2, maybe 3 left, and hopefully that man keeps publishing more, but hopefully they're novels and not like The Archer.